Knock, knock. Who's there? I want to know. I want to know who. I want to know who told The Weeknd to act again. Guys, remember last year when I made a video about Assassination Nation by Sam Levinson and I dragged him to filth, but I also looked really, really high? Well, it feels like we're back in those times. I'm back to in and out of surgeries. I'm back on my medication. Feels great. The Weeknd has another movie out. It's called Hurry Up Tomorrow, where again he can't act, and Sam Levinson is filming season 3 of Euphoria. So I thought, what a great opportunity to revisit The Idol, because I never talked about it. Remember when I said I was going to, and then I didn't, then a lot of months passed? Well, here we are, better late than never. But before we do, make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and keep the family growing, because I can't sit down. I feel like no one can talk about The Idol without properly addressing the elephant in the room, which was production messy boots. Amy Seimetz was meant to direct this project that was focused on a female pop star and the manipulation and exploitation that goes on in the music industry. She got to film 80% of the show. It was meant to be 6 episodes. She spent $45 to $54 million, which some may think is a lot, but to do a show of this scope is not a lot. She was under a lot of pressure. HBO was really riding her ass to do more than she could ever do with such a tiny budget. And then Abel Tesfaye, The Weeknd, also co-creator of the show, decided that the show had too much of a female perspective, the show about a female pop star, and he wasn't happy with how little he had to do on screen. You know, he was also the male counterpart to our protagonist, Jocelyn. So something happened. She had to leave the project because she did have other commitments. And then they brought in Sam Levinson, one of the 3 writers of the show. Guys, did you know that this show about a female pop star focusing on the female perspective had 3 male writers? And then 2 co-writers, one of which was a woman. So Hollywood continues to make shows and movies about the female perspective without inviting the female perspective into the room until it's too late and most of it is already done. And then it's just like, oh yeah, we brought in a woman to polish the mess. So it's not a shit show, it's a shit show overseen by a woman in the last 2% of the project. So Sam Levinson walks into this project and decides to scrap everything they had done so far. He thought, I'm gonna make this a Euphoria, but with adult characters, so people online can't call me sick and depraved anymore. Well, guess what, Sam? You're still kind of sick and depraved. They wanted to make this a Euphoria for pop stars, I guess, but they ended up making this torture porn for porn fantasists. Listen, Amy Seimetz created a great working environment on set. All the actors, all the crew, they were all happy with the progress, even though she was handed a plate full of shit to work with. Even the story was going great places. Apparently the vibe, the atmosphere she created was very reminiscent of like 90s, early 2000s pop stars kind of vibe. It was cool, it was fresh, it was going to be a success. Critically, commercially, the works. But this Rolling Stones article that came out and bashed the show before it even came out said that they turned this inspired female-centric story into a fantasy. Sam Levinson at one point stopped sending scripts to HBO. You know, he rewrote the whole show. He was like, you know what? I don't like any of this. What I want to see is sex. Like, just messy, awkward, cringy, dirty talk. I want to see a man dominate a woman. I want to see an abused woman beg to be abused. I wish I was joking. I'm not. There's a message that we can take out of this show is that good art only comes from trauma. And to create good art, you should seek trauma. You should seek to traumatize yourself mentally and physically, exhaust yourself, get abused, and then praised by your peers. I also know it's a little too late to talk about this because it's been out for 2 years, but listen, these two continue working, and I don't know why. We got to address the situation because I thought we learned by now that what they do doesn't even appeal to people who like Euphoria. See, Euphoria has a lot of diehard fans who will defend the show to the ends of the earth. You know, the show with a lot of teenagers having a lot of naked sex. I know that sex is had naked normally, but we don't need to see teenagers do it, even if the actors are adults. But some people defend it because they like whatever else happens around it, which is drug use. And that's cool. Do you. But even Euphoria fans looked at The Idol and thought, you know what? A tad too far, Sam. Not our jam. Like, this is not us. He turned this story about a female pop star into the sleaziest love story Hollywood has ever seen. It takes a certain kind of sick to call this love. I don't know, part of me thinks that he's perpetuating the idea that love revolves around abuse. I don't even want to imagine how his personal relationships are. I think he has a wife and kids, but I digress. I don't want to do any personal attacks. No ad hominem going around here. But I think he wasted a good opportunity because we were going to see like the portrayal of a story that would remind us of such stars as, for example, Britney Spears. We all followed the very public life of Britney Spears and how the media, the paparazzi, the industry at large just came down on her so hard. It literally drove her into a conservatorship that ruined her life for years and years, and no one did because they were all profiting off of her, right? That's what we were going to see. And instead, we see a woman that wants to be. Now, as bad as the show itself was, and if you've watched it, you know it's bad, he wanted to do worse. Like, for example, there was a couple of scrapped scenes, like The Weeknd's character, Tedros, forces Lily Rose Depp's character, Jocelyn, to walk around with an egg in her vagina. And if she dropped the egg or cracked it, he was going to refuse to rape her, leading her to have a mental breakdown because she wants to be. There was another scene where he was going to beat her up, slam her face against a wall, and she turns to him, bleeding, smiles, and begs him to beat her up more. And he gets an erection. So I feel like we dodged a bullet on a couple of those scrapped scenes, but what we didn't dodge a bullet on was seeing Sam Levinson's mind at work. And now here's where my thoughts come in. I think he wants to be seen as a progressive transgressive. Let me explain. Progressive because he's not afraid to touch on these progressive storylines. You know, he's known for having trans characters in his projects, and he even hires trans actors. And we know that Hollywood only portrays trans people when it's to hire cisgender actors so they can then win Oscars. So that's pretty progressive of him, right? And then he makes them all like he puts them all on a level playing field, almost like he doesn't give a fuck about anyone, right? Like he's not homophobic or transphobic or racist. He just hates everyone equally. So he feels like he can get away with anything because of realism, because this is how people talk. We're being honest here. We're being honest when we say shit like this. To give this line to a Zionist, guys, this is peak what the fuck were you thinking, Sam? And he says these transgressive things, you know, in the middle of his progressiveness, and he feels like he can get away with it because at the end of the day, he's a good guy. You know, he doesn't harbor any specific hatred for anyone. The problem is that I think he lacks the vision to go beyond surface level, beyond what he can observe with his eyes directly. He's not able to rationalize storylines that exist outside of his scope of existence, right? He's not able to conceptualize how do I take this story from A to B in a realistic way. So instead, he defaults to very crass language and a lot of sex. And even then, we would have been fine if it was just sex, you know? Both actors are of age, both characters are consenting adults. So Sam was like, I gotta make this problematic, right? They're not kids anymore. So people, I need to give them something to complain about. So he brings in abuse, SA, just a lot of trauma. And he turns this into a woman that is abused and wants to be abused, and when crawls back begging to be abused again. And then he gives it a twist at the end. And I have a really dark theory, playing devil's advocate, that I think he was trying to frame it as a feminist power move. But we'll get to that in the end. Because before we drag his work to filth, as it deserves to be dragged, I think he has a lot of potential, right? I think in his inability to tell good stories and instead default to really cringy sex, I think he has good ideas. Example number 1. In episode 1, Jocelyn opens up with her doing a photo shoot, and she has a robe, underwear, and nothing else. And, you know, she's getting into the shoot, giving nuances and emotion, and then one thing leads to another. She pulls the robe to the side, and she shows nipple. However, they had a nudity rider in place. Nudity rider is like a document where they agree beforehand, like what the artist is allowed to show and not show on camera so that the photos can then be approved and released without, you know, going back to the artist and being like, hey, is it okay that we showed your nipple? So they have these nudity writers in place. And the nudity writer said that she could show side boob, under boob, top boob, but not areola. So as soon as she shows it, there's a guy on set to ensure that everything, goes well. Someone that wasn't in the It Ends With Us movie, that kind of guy. And he's like, yo, you can't do that because, she can do that, but he can't photograph and then use those pictures because it wasn't agreed. It's not legally authorized. And this was an interesting setup. Like, oh, this is what happens in the industry. People have to agree to certain limitations and rules when doing photo shoots and other such types of work. All of these documents are put in place to protect the artist because, listen, Jocelyn is a renowned pop star. She has her team, she has people that ride or die for her. She has security in her job. But imagine if this was like an up-and-coming new artist, someone that is desperate to make it, that they're willing to compromise their own values or compromise their own boundaries in order to impress. If you're trying to impress someone in an industry that you feel kind of out of place because you're new or whatever, you may feel like to get a foot in the door, you have to do what others maybe wouldn't. You have to really prove yourself. And sometimes that can lead to exploitation, taking advantage of the smaller artist, especially women. So this storyline was interesting. But instead, Jocelyn's entire team frames this as this guy taking away her agency in trying to protect her with these legal documents that are required for a reason. He is actually policing her body, and that is wrong. And they go so far as locking this guy in the bathroom for the duration of the photo shoot so she can do whatever the hell she wants, which is dangerous because, she shows areola, but then they post the pictures, and what if she changes her mind? She's like, actually, I don't want that used. I don't want my boob out there like this. I changed my mind. She could sue the photographer or the magazine or whoever is posting the pictures because it's not in writing that she authorized it. It's there to protect the artist. But also, again, if Jocelyn was a smaller artist, they could have taken advantage of her. Just ask any female professional in the industry if anyone has ever tried to take advantage of them, and they'll probably respond with a resounding yes. Yes, they have. So in doing so, it feels like Sam is criticizing these nudity writers and these procedures, which wouldn't be surprising because, as we know, he's known for requesting his actresses on set to do more than needed. Sydney Sweeney, in an interview, who plays Cassie in Euphoria, she's topless a lot, and she said that at times she has to turn to Sam and be like, "Hey, I don't think my character needs to be topless in this scene. It's not necessary." And though he acquiesces and he follows their advice and he, includes them in the work environment. And I'm not saying that Sam does this. I'm saying that Sam is criticizing the process, which feels weird. But also, this show was co-created by The Weeknd. So is The Weeknd endorsing the statement that we shouldn't police women's bodies? If they want to show boob, they should show boob, and we should not have any documents protecting them because that's policing their bodies, and that's wrong. Bit of a missed opportunity, but it could have been a good storyline. It could have delved deeper into the intricacies, the ins and outs of what happens when this kind of stuff happens. Another example: someone leaks a compromising picture of Jocelyn. Now, the picture could have been anything. We've seen, when there's a mass leak of celebrity nudes, it's a violation of their privacy, and we can all agree that it's wrong, even though a lot of people share it and talk about it and spread it, and then they have to put out statements, etc. It's wrong. It's a violation of their privacy. Sam is a little bit more creative with the photo, and instead of being a nude, it's a photo of Jocelyn with cum on her face. A photo that Jocelyn supposedly took. Don't know why it had to be cum on her face. I feel like he wanted to see Lily Rose Depp with cum on her face on the show because they do show the picture at some point, which is highly unnecessary. But removing the inspired nature of the picture aside, this could have been an interesting storyline as well. Something like this happening is not unusual in the real world, and we've seen how normally the media reacts. A lot of times they even villainize the person in the picture for taking the picture, as if to say, well, why did you take the picture in the first place? You should have known, you should have prepared. Which is, the victim blaming that society does a lot when a woman privacy is violated. And even in the show, they go as far as saying, why would she take a picture like this? Again, like, why would she not? Like, why should she not be allowed to take a picture like this if she wants the fucking memento? But instead, they kind of sweep that storyline under the rug, and then they bring it up later when her creative director, played by Troye Sivan, our favorite twink, and I can say that because I used to be one. I used to be one. I used to be a twink. Not anymore. Now I'm an old, decrepit twunk. He thinks that the power move, the empowering move, is for her to use that picture as the cover for her new album. And she's reticent about it. She's not really sure she wants to rehash the whole come in a face conversation in the media, because though the men telling her that it'd be empowering think it'd be empowering, she's like, well, you're saying that because you're not the ones who are at the center of the conversation. And I think in these situations, the empowering thing is to listen to what the woman wants to do, not the men around her. But that conversation is only used to lead to something way more disturbing that we will touch on the points later made in this video, that Sam Levinson is kind of sick in the head. So the whole come in the face picture is only really used to advance a different storyline that is so much more disturbing, nothing to do with empowerment, nothing to do with how the industry treats women in these situations, nothing to do with how fandoms treat celebrities in these situations. It's all a big missed opportunity. Damn. Another example. They got Jennie from Blackpink to play a role in this series. She's Diane. She's a backup dancer who catches the eye of Nicki, the music producer. Nicki is this horrible human being who says that mental illness is sexy and has no problem exploiting Jocelyn for her mental illness because it'll sell, because sex sells. So Nicki sees Diane dancing and she's like, whoa, can she sing? Because if she can sing and she's out dancing everyone, Jocelyn included, then I'm going to sign her. And here we have, a renowned pop star in real life playing an up-and-coming ingenue on screen. They could have built a storyline between these two, like a rival sort of thing, one that would explore the dynamics in the industry and how perhaps a lot of the time these disputes between artists aren't even fueled by a personal disliking of each other. Perhaps it's just the music label trying to stir up drama in the media to build the reputation of both of them. Even going as far as they offer Jocelyn's single to Diane, showing that artists don't always have a say in the songs they release. It's the labels deciding for them, and how maybe that's why sometimes singers release songs that don't really sound like it should belong to them because it doesn't go with their artistic persona in public, but it's the labels pushing this. It could have been so interesting to see how the industry pits women against each other, even though behind the scenes in all of their interactions, they're kind of nice to each other. But no, they give Jennie like 2 to 3 minutes of airtime per episode, and there's only 5 episodes, so it's really not a lot to do. They barely interact with each other. They have like 2 conversations throughout the entire series. One of them is to go to a club together, which is used as a plot point for Jocelyn to meet Tedros. And the other one, when Diane asks Jocelyn if she's okay with her taking the single, World Class Sinner, which starts with, I'm just a freak, yeah. World class sinner, world class single. Whoop, whoop. And Jocelyn says, yes, of course, I wouldn't want to stand in the way of you reaching success. Only to cut to Diane getting sidelined by the music label because the song is actually being held due to some legal dispute. And then as she goes away, she turns to the producer and she's like, it was Jocelyn, wasn't it? And we never hear an answer, and we never see her again. It doesn't make any sense how we went from point A to point B through point A/B. It feels like there was a lot here that could have been said on a show about a female pop star, and instead, it all got replaced with Tedros and Jocelyn's dirty talk in the bedroom, all while an underage girl watches from the bedroom closet. Oh, that happens. He blindfolds her and then he tells her to lay on the bed, and then he sits across from her but like far away that he can't touch her, and then he starts with this like really cringy dirty talk. And listen, dirty talk is always kind of cringy when taken out of context, but even within the context of a show, I laughed. There is some comedic value to be found in The Idol when you hear The Weeknd act like a big a womanizing man who's hot, 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 so hot that Jocelyn just can't help but throw herself at him. And then when he's threatening to a staff member at a store who looks at Jocelyn, dares to look in her direction, and he's like, "I'm gonna curb stomp you. I'm gonna fucking curb stomp you outside."
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna catch you looking at it. I'll drag you down Rodeo while your ass just stomp you. I'll curb stomp you. I'm sorry. I'll curb stomp you.
It's like watching a little chihuahua bark at a big pit bull, you know? It's like, oh, that's cute. He thinks he's being intimidating. So all the good storylines are wasted. There is, however, a redeeming quality in episode 2, and it's this sequence. Jocelyn is shooting a music video, and she takes herself to complete exhaustion trying to get the perfect take. And she goes again and again and again until she finally does the choreography completely, perfectly flawless. But the camera malfunctions and they can't use any of it. And she has a full-on meltdown. Her feet are bleeding. Her thighs are chafing. She's crying, starts calling out to her dead mother. And then everyone around her is like, what the fuck do we do? And the only person that can give her a pep talk is her manager. But then the music producer comes in, steps in and is like, no, I need you to go home and sleep. We can do this all tomorrow. And then she cancels the tomorrow shoot. It feels very real, and Lily Rose Depp did her big one. She really gave a good performance here. And this was a fleeting moment where it felt like I was being gaslit into thinking this is actually a good show. You know, like when you're on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok and you see like clips of movies and shows, and if they showed like this snippet of the show on TikTok, I'd be like, oh wait, I need to find out the name of the show. And then I go and look it up and it's The Idol. Oh. Ugh. Maybe that's why they included it, because they could, use those snippets online to create buzz around the show. But instead, the only clip that went around was The Weeknd threatening to curb stomp the guy.
Stomp you. I'll curb stomp you. I'm sorry. I'll curb stomp you.
And listen, Sam Levinson isn't completely inept at the art of filmmaking, right? He can make things look good. The angles, the lighting, the camera work. It looks pretty. He also has a lot of budget behind him. Apparently, no one knows how much this cost. He just gave himself free reign, like, woo, blank check. Woohoo! But that's about it. That's about it. And that's just covering what happens in half of episode 1 and a tenth of episode 2, because everything else is bad. Ironically, the show works when we're following Jocelyn. When Jocelyn is on screen, when it's her story, it's her trying to make this comeback work, her dealing with the pressures of having to deliver good songs, especially now that her life has been turned upside down and she's still kind of in mourning and she's heavily traumatized. And then the show always goes off the rails down the toilet when Tedros walks in, when The Weeknd makes an appearance as his character. Tedros, he is a club owner, music producer, music label owner, cult leader. He has this cult of kids, and I'm going to say kids because at least 2 of them are minors. There's hints. Again, Sam Levinson wasn't doing Euphoria, but he managed to get those minors into the story. One way or another, we're always going to have a man have sex with an ambiguously aged girl, and that's the end of it. And for as many up things that happen in the show, I think the biggest one is, I think it's episode 3. They're at the table, and it's like this whole conversation about using her picture with Come On Her Face as the album cover. And that conversation leads to us finding out that Jocelyn's mother, before she passed, was actually really abusive. She would beat Jocelyn up with a hairbrush, especially in areas of her body that are usually covered with clothes, as a form of control, punishment, and motivation. So she would use the hairbrush to either punish bad behaviors that Jocelyn had or to motivate her to be better. And ultimately, she was controlling Jocelyn's life. And Tedros' response is to basically imply that Jocelyn misses the abuse that her mother inflicted on her because it gave her an outlet to create good art. So they recreate the abuse, this time with Tedros inflicting pain on Jocelyn, but also taking over her entire life. He brings his cult into her house, he fires half of the staff, mistreats the other half, and then using physical and sexual violence, he pushes Jocelyn to write 3 great hits. One thing about the hits, I'll say, they sound like trash. They suck. Maybe they should have spent the budget on creating actual catchy good songs, but instead they're songs centered around sex and sex noises. Because in this show, You're only a good singer if you can sell sex. That is like the whole shtick of the show, is that, yeah, you have to be ultra sexual and you have to give lap dances to music producers for them to carry on with a tour. It's a whole thing. There's even a whole scene in this show where they're all like gathered in her home studio, which apparently was filmed in The Weeknd's house. You know, they had spent so much budget in the first attempt at filming The Idol that to cut costs, they asked The Weeknd to use his house to film, you know, all of the scenes in Jocelyn's home. So they're in this studio and it's got like 20 people. And Jocelyn's manager tells them that the word yeah in one of the songs doesn't sound realistic enough, authentic enough. So Tedros has an idea. He knows how to bring out the voice in her, and he brings out the voice in her through sex. Yeah. And you must be thinking, wait, what is he going to do to bring out her voice in the middle of a studio? Surely he's not going to her, right? No, of course not. He's going to masturbate her instead. He blindfolds her in front of everyone. There's like 2 or 3 professional music producers, and then there's his whole cult plus her team. He blindfolds her, he takes her from the back, and he starts rubbing her down there, all while she moans into the microphone, yeah, 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 repeatedly, until they get a convincing enough sound that she's having sex while singing the song. That's how you make authentic music, apparently, according to these guys. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I always thought that, you know, someone who works in performance, whether it's music, acting, the talent is in bringing out those emotions in the moment. You know, you may have your methods, whatever, but it's about being able to fake the emotions in the moment, because that's where the talent comes. But if you have to finger yourself in order to sound like you're having sex, then maybe feigning sex sounds in your art isn't your thing. Because what are you going to do when you sing live? You're not going to on stage, are you? In front of thousands of people? You can't be serious. And Jocelyn isn't the only one that suffers at the hands of Tedros. There's a scene with her creative director. His name is Xander, you know, played by Troye Sivan. And Tedros asks 2 of his little minions to tie him up. Then he puts a shock collar around his neck and shocks him because he said that Jocelyn's mom forced him to sign a contract promising to never sing. And they don't like that because they think he's lying. And so he is shocking Xander in front of everyone, and he's crying, begging to be set free. And then he throws out this statement that was, I guess, them laying the groundwork for the big twist, which is that Jocelyn is a master manipulator. She's always manipulated everyone around her, and she's doing that right now to you, Tedros. Tedros then leaves Xander tied up for hours. He even pisses his pants, and I guess that makes Xander become loyal to Tedros, because that makes a lot of sense. You know, abused people like abuse, so they're constantly going back begging for more. Okay, but the big twist is stupid. Stupid as shit. Stupid as shit. It's dumb. I have a really bad theory about it, because I want to believe that in some weird way Sam and Abel wanted to bring the initial messaging of the show back onto the optics of the show, even though I actually don't think that it could have happened. Anyway, in the end, right, after Tedros has been disgraced by Jocelyn's team, who wanted to get him out of her life forever, 6 weeks after they expose him as a physical and sexual abuser, he kidnapped his ex-girlfriend and kept her in a locked house for 3 days while he tortured her. He also used to pimp women out and beat them up. He was just all around a bad guy. And they expose all of his crimes to the media. They even expose his real name. His real name is not Tedros. His real name is Mauricio Costello Jackson. Jocelyn decides to bring him back into her life because all of this success doesn't feel as good without him. That's literally what she says to him verbatim. I'm paraphrasing, but it's along those lines. And then he sees the hairbrush that her mom used to beat her with, that he then started beating her with. By the way, did you know that when recreating the trauma she suffered at the hands of her mother, he would beat her up, all while the cult was just in the room watching like a ritual? Yeah. So he notices the hairbrush is new. And he's like, oh, it's new. And she throws him a malicious, smiling glance like, of we're supposed to know what that means. And a few theories I saw online came up after watching this. One of them is that Jocelyn faked the abuse of her mother. That's why she bought a new hairbrush. She just kept one. She kept recycling it to, I guess, brush her hair aggressively and have something to get beat up with. And that the abuse at the hands of her mother was just all faked. It was her creative process to have it there with her. And I don't believe that. I don't think she faked the abuse with her mother. The other theory, and also my theory, is that she has a new hairbrush so she can continue getting it, because that's the only way that she can write good songs. And she wants him to continue being her abuser. What? But it gets worse, because then on stage, sold out stadium, in front of thousands and thousands of people, in front of her entire management team that got rid of Tedros to protect her, she announces the love of her life, Tedros. And he walks onto that stage, awkward as hell, and she proclaims to the entire world that this man that was just exposed as an abuser, as a violent human being that no one should want in their lives, is the love of her life. He's her muse. And I guess it's her way of saying, like, to everyone, like, I take control of my life. I don't work for my managers, they work for me, because all of these fans are here to see me. And now she also owns Tedros, you know, because he has no choice but to be with her, because his life is ruined because he's been exposed. And I just gotta say, Jocelyn, girl, are you stupid? Why would this be a good move? Why would you, as a pop star, want to? It's like if Rihanna now decided to announce Chris Brown as the love of her life in a new concert. How do we think that would go down? Would we be applauding, or would we be like, Rihanna, you're kind of stupid? Like, is that supposed to be? And this is where my dark theory comes, right? I think this was their, like, pro-feminist twist, right? Like, Jocelyn has been the perpetrator, the mastermind manipulator all along. She orchestrated her abuse so she could create more songs. You know, in the absence of her mom and all of the trauma that she was living under, she had to recreate it somehow. So I guess she got this sleazy club owner to infiltrate her life, not knowing that he was doing so, with her knowing that he was going to because she wanted him to, and then she got him to beat her up for her to write good songs. So, like, they turned the victim, the female victim, of course, into actually the oppressor, the mind behind it all. She wasn't being abused, she was orchestrating her own abuse so she could be good at singing again. What the Sam and Abel? What the were you trying to say? Because the implication of this entire story is that abuse is good, a trauma is good, especially if you're an artist, and you should 100% seek out the trauma. You know, there's a couple of conversations spread out throughout the episodes that hint at the fact that everyone kind of agrees with this statement. Like, for example, when Jocelyn's best friend Leia, played by the great Rachel Sennett, hugely undervalued talent in this show, tells her kind of boyfriend, Isaac, that it's kind of fucked up to see all of these people, like, taking advantage of Jocelyn, like seeing Tedros her in front of everyone and no one's doing anything, all because it's going to lead to good art. And his response is, well, she's not human, she's a star, and stars belong to the people. What? Bitch, what the fuck are we talking about? Or when Jocelyn is talking to these cult members, and Isaac asks her if she wants to sing with him, and she says no. And they're all like, ooh, Tedros wouldn't want you saying no. He says that saying no is depriving yourself of an experience. And Jocelyn's like, well, not all experiences are good. And their answer is, yeah, but this guy, Robert Plant, had a 5-year-old son, and when his son died at the age of 5, left him so traumatized, he wrote this beautiful song called I Can't Remember. One of the most beautiful songs ever. And Jocelyn's like, yeah, but I mean, I'm sure that if he had to choose between having his son or his song, he would choose his son. And they go, yeah, but that would be a huge loss for the world. Because think of all the people this song has helped. Good thing his son died, so he could write this fucking song. Right? Right? Samuel. Sammy boy. Sam the man. I don't see a man though, do I? Because what the is this? What kind of fantasy is it A woman who begs to be abused and orchestrates her own to make good art. She excuses all kind of shitty behavior. She knows that Tedros orchestrated fake accusations against her ex-boyfriend out of jealousy, and she did nothing about it, which is another whole side story that makes no sense. So, the story about a female pop star exploited by the industry through a female perspective gets turned into a master manipulating evil genius mastermind woman who orchestrates her own abuse as a form of creative process at the hands of a cult leader? Yeah. Yep, that's it. That is it. I think to justify this story, Sam is making more mental gymnastics than Zionists when they're explaining why Israel isn't committing genocide and is instead just defending itself. Sure, Jan. And this I would consider Sam's best work. Not because it's good, it's really not, but because this is the type of work he puts out when he's able to work without any restrictions or studio supervision or really any budget constraints. Because he did whatever he wanted. That's what he said. I'm going to do whatever I want. What are they going to do? Pull the plug? If they want me to give them a season 3 of Euphoria, they're going to let me do what I want. That is literally what he said. And then when the reviews started coming out and the Rolling Stones article came out, he said,
when my wife read me the article, I looked at her and I just said, I think we're about to have the biggest show of the summer.
And that, my friends, is why you don't let 3 men write about the story of a woman without forcing them to first meet a woman. I feel like they need to meet a woman, like actually talk to a woman, like conversate, hold a conversation that lasts longer than 5 minutes and doesn't include alcohol or cocaine or talks of sex. You know, really get to understand how women operate in the world, how they exist, what matters to them, what doesn't, what they like, what they don't like. Spoiler alert, they're not going to tell you they like to be. That's just a sick fantasy you got in your head. But to see it play out on screen and to have the budget they had, ooh, my God. I know the HBO was furious because the show was supposed to be 6 episodes. We only got 5. I'm guessing that a lot of the storytelling itself is really bad, but there's a lot of missing components that you feel like a lot should have been in here and is not. I feel like at some point someone decided to check in on the project and realize this was going to be such a shit show. They just cut out an entire episode's worth of story. And somehow they didn't cut enough. They should have cut out the entire fucking show. They should actually release the version of Amy Simons, which is what a lot of people have been asking over the years. So I'm going to renew the calls for that to happen because I would like to know what kind of 90s, 80s pop star aesthetic she was cooking. Because I feel like it cannot be worse than this. It's got to be so much better. I mean, they did the Snyder cut for the DC's Justice League of whatever, right? Why can't they do it with this as well? Just release her version. Even if it's incomplete, we won't care. It'll probably be a better story, even if it doesn't have an ending, I guarantee you. And with that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, make sure to leave it a like down below, subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends. God, it's time to take more of my meds. Back on the med train, baby. Don't know why I said that, but subscribe anyway. Okay. And until next time, stay safe. Oh, also follow me on social media. All linked down below. Yeah, I always forget to say that, but do check in on my Instagram. That's what I use the most. But yeah, anyway, until next time. Oh, and we post every week, like once, twice a week. Maybe, yeah, I know. Until next time. Bye. Stay safe. Stay sane. Stay stupid. And stay stuttering.